Kestrel's boots hammered against the frozen ground as she fled through the pine forest, her wedding dress a billowing white ghost against the darkening sky. The silk train caught on brambles, tearing with each desperate stride, but she didn't slow down. Behind her, the distant shouts of her father's men grew fainter. Swallowed by the howling wind that promised a brutal storm, she crashed through a thicket and collided with something solid. A man crouched motionless beside a massive oak. They tumbled together into the snow, her elaborate veil tangling around his weathered leather coat. For a heartbeat, neither moved, stunned by the impact and the sudden intimacy of their position. Vex rolled first, instinctively reaching for the knife at his belt before recognizing she wasn't a threat. His pale eyes, sharp as winter ice, took in her torn dress, the wild desperation in her face, the way she scrambled backward like a cornered animal. He'd been tracking a rebel camp for 3 days without speaking a word to another soul, moving like smoke through these mountains. Now this vision in white had shattered his solitude. "Please," Kestrel gasped, her breath forming desperate clouds in the frigid air. "They can't find me. I won't go back to him." Vex studied her with the calculating silence that had kept him alive through countless missions. The approaching storm would be merciless. He could smell the metallic temps of heavy snow on the wind, see how the trees bent under its growing fury. Alone, she wouldn't survive the night. The wedding dress, however beautiful, was a death sentence in this wilderness. Thunder cracked overhead, but it wasn't thunder. It was the sound of ice-laden branches snapping under the weight of the storm's advance guard. Fat snowflakes began to fall, each one a frozen promise of the blizzard to come. "There's a cave," Vex said, his voice rough from disuse. "Quarter-mile north?" Kestrel's eyes widened at his unexpected help. She'd expected him to drag her back to the village, to collect whatever reward her father offered. Instead, he was already moving, gathering his pack with efficient movements that spoke of a man accustomed to survival. "Why would you? Because you're already half frozen, and I don't leave people to die in storms." Slung his pack over his shoulder and fixed her with that unsettling pale gaze. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though her legs trembled from cold and exhaustion. The thin slippers she'd worn for her wedding were already soaked through, her feet growing numb as they began their trek through the deepening snow. She caught glimpses of him in her peripheral vision, the way he moved with predatory grace, how his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, the weapons hidden beneath his coat. "What's your name?" She called over the rising wind. He didn't answer immediately, leading her around a fallen log with practiced ease. When he finally spoke, his words were nearly lost in the storm's growing roar. Vex, behind them the last lights of the village, disappeared into the white fury of the blizzard, sealing their fate together in the wilderness. The cave Vex led her to was little more than a crack in the mountainside, but it cut deep enough to shelter them from the wind that now shrieked like a living thing. Kestrel collapsed against the stone wall, her wedding dress a sodden ruin, her body shaking violently from cold and shock. Vex worked with methodical precision, his hands sure despite the darkness. She heard the strike of flint, saw sparks bloom into flame as he coaxed a fire from the dry wood he'd somehow found even in this desolate place. The light danced across his angular features, revealing scars that spoke of violence survived, eyes that held secrets darker than the storm outside. "You need to get out of that dress," he said without looking at her, his tone purely practical. "It's wet, and wet cloth kills faster than cold." Kestrel's cheeks burned despite the chill. "Can't. There's nothing else. My coat's dry." He shrugged out of the heavy leather garment and held it toward her, still keeping his eyes fixed on the fire. "Turn around. I won't look." She hesitated, then began working at the tiny buttons that ran the length of her spine. Her numb fingers fumbled with the delicate fastenings, and she bit back a sob of frustration. The fabric clung to her skin like ice, each layer peeling away to reveal flesh mottled blue with cold. "I can't, my hands won't work without a word." Vex moved behind her. His fingers, surprisingly gentle for such a dangerous-looking man, worked the buttons free with practiced efficiency. She felt the dress fall away in pieces, felt his coat settle around her shoulders like a warm embrace. It smelled of pine smoke, leather, and something indefinably masculine that made her pulse quicken despite everything. Better? His voice was carefully neutral as he returned to tending the fire. Thank you. She pulled the coat tighter around herself, grateful for its enveloping warmth. I'm Kestrel. He nodded as if he'd already guessed. Running from a wedding. Da 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 da. Da 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 Wasn't a question. She wondered what else those observant eyes had noted: the elaborate hairpins scattered in the snow, the fresh bruise on her wrist where her father had grabbed her, the way she flinched at sudden sounds. From a marriage, she corrected, settling beside the fire, to a man who collects wives the way some men collect hunting trophies. She stared into the flames, seeing Aldrich's cold smile in the dancing light. I would have been his fourth. The others. They don't speak anymore. They just stare at nothing with empty eyes. Vex's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Your family agreed to this? My father sees only the gold Aldrich offered. Enough to clear his debts and buy more land. Her voice turned bitter. Fair trade, he said. One daughter for financial security. The wind howled louder, driving snow through the cave opening in icy needles. Vex moved closer to block the wind from reaching her. She caught the controlled tension in his movements, the way his hand never strayed far from his weapons. What about you? She asked. What brings a man like you to these mountains alone? Work. What? Kind of work requires such ... preparation. She gestured to his arsenal: the knives, the crossbow, the way he'd automatically chosen the most defensible position in the cave. His smile was sharp as winter steel, the kind that keeps dangerous people from hurting innocents. Outside, the blizzard raged with increasing fury, sealing them together in their small circle of warmth and flickering light. The fire began to die as the storm reached its peak fury, and Kestrel felt the cold creeping back into her bones despite Vex's coat. She watched him feed the last of their dry wood to the flames, his movements economical but troubled. That's all there is, he said quietly, confirming her fears. The cave felt smaller now, the darkness pressing in as the fire dwindled to glowing embers. Already, she could see her breath again, feel the stone walls radiating cold that would soon become deadly. Outside, the wind screamed with a violence that spoke of a storm that might last days. Come here, Vex said, settling with his, back against the cave wall. When she hesitated, he explained with clinical detachment, body heat. It's the only way we'll make it through the night. Kestrel moved closer, acutely aware that beneath his coat, she wore only her thin chemise. When she still shivered despite their proximity, Vex opened his arms in clear invitation. She settled against his chest, feeling his warmth seep through the leather, his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek. Tell me about before, she whispered, needing distraction from their situation and the strange intimacy of their position. Before you became ... whatever you are. His chest rose and fell in a long breath. I had a sister once. Lyrian, she was everything bright in the world. Laughed at everything, trusted everyone. His voice grew distant. She married young, too, a man who seemed kind. By the time we learned what he really was, Estrella lifted her head to look at him in the dying firelight. What happened? She died trying to run, like you. But she ran in winter, and she ran alone. His arms tightened around her fractionally. I found her frozen in a ditch 3 miles from his estate, still in her nightgown. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but she meant them. She could see the pain carved into the hard lines of his face, understand now why he'd helped a stranger without question. After that, I made it my business to know men like Aldrich, to stop them when the law won't. He looked down at her with eyes that held years of carefully controlled fury. Your Aldrich has a reputation that reaches far beyond this valley. A chill that had nothing to do with the cold ran down her spine. You know him? I came here because of him. There's a bounty on his head not from any court, but from the families of women who've suffered under his care. His smile was predatory. I've been watching his estate for weeks, waiting for the right moment, and then I literally ran into you. And then you ran into me. The last ember winked out, plunging them into absolute darkness. In the blackness, every sensation intensified his warmth against her side. The scent of his skin, the way his breathing changed when she shifted against him. Vex, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. I know. His voice was strained. I feel it too. Neither of them moved. But something fundamental shifted between them in that moment. The desperate intimacy of survival was transforming into something deeper, more dangerous. Something that made her pulse race and her breath catch. Outside, the blizzard raged on, but inside their small shelter, a different kind of fire was beginning to burn. In the absolute darkness of the cave, touch became everything. Kestrel felt Vex's fingers trace along her arm where the coat had slipped, ostensibly adjusting the garment, but lingering longer than necessity required. His breathing had changed, become deeper, more controlled, the breathing of a man fighting an internal battle. You're still cold, he murmured, though they both knew it was more than cold making her tremble now. Yes, she whispered, because it was easier than admitting the truth that his proximity was setting her on fire in ways she'd never experienced. That every accidental touch sent lightning through her veins. He pulled her closer, and she could feel the tension in his body, the careful restraint in every movement. His hands settled at the small of her back, warm through the thin fabric of her chemise, and she couldn't suppress the soft sound that escaped her lips. Kestrel. Her name was a warning, a question, and a prayer, all at once. She answered by turning. In his arms, her face tilting up toward where she knew his would be in the darkness. Their lips met with desperate inevitability, soft at first, tentative. Then with growing hunger as weeks of solitude and years of loneliness crashed together. In the space between heartbeats, his hands tangled in her hair, scattering the remaining pins from her ruined wedding style. She pressed closer, needing to feel his strength, his warmth. The solid reality of him against the nightmare her life had become. This was nothing like the cold duty she'd expected with Aldrich. This was fire and choice and the wild beating of her heart against his chest. Shouldn't Vex. Breathed against her lips, even as his hands mapped the curve of her spine through the leather coat. Why? She nipped at his lower lip, felt him shudder in response. Because you barely know me? Because I'm running from a wedding? Because we might not survive until morning? Because you deserve better than a cave floor and a man who kills for money? Maybe I deserve the right to choose. Her fingers found the fastenings of his shirt, working them open with growing confidence. Maybe I deserve to feel something real before I die. He caught her hands, stilling them. You're not going to die. I won't let that happen. Then give me something to live for, she whispered. The storm outside seemed to pause, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then Vex's restraint shattered. He claimed her mouth with a passion that burned away the cold, the fear. Everything except the desperate need they shared. His coat fell away as they moved together in the darkness. Skin against skin, warmth, building between them like the fire they no longer had. She mapped the scars on his chest with reverent fingers, while he whispered her name like a benediction against her throat. When they finally came together, it was with the urgency of the storm itself, wild and necessary and completely consuming. She cried out at the intensity of it, at the way he filled not just her body, but some hollow space in her soul she hadn't known existed. Afterward, they lay entwined in the darkness, hearts slowly settling to match the rhythm of their breathing. Vex's arms held her like she was something precious, and for the first time in her life, Kestrel felt truly safe. When this storm ends, she murmured against his shoulder, what happens then? His arms tightened around her, Then we finish what we started, together, if you'll have me. His voice held a vulnerability that made her chest ache. If you want a life with a man who lives in shadows. I want a life with you, she said simply. Shadows and all. Outside, the blizzard began to quiet, but neither of them noticed. They were too busy building their own fire. Kestrel woke to pale light filtering through the cave entrance, and the disorienting warmth of Vex's body curved around hers. For a moment, she couldn't place where she was, then memory flooded back in a rush of sensation and emotion that made her breath catch. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by snow and ice. Everything outside sparkled with crystalline beauty, but Kestrel's attention was caught by the man beside her. In sleep, Vex looked younger. The hard lines of his face softened, the constant vigilance relaxed. She studied the network of scars that decorated his chest, and arms each one a story of survival, of battles fought and won. His eyes opened suddenly, instantly alert, in the way of someone accustomed to danger. When he saw her watching him, his expression gentled. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning." She felt shy suddenly, uncertain in the harsh light of day. What they'd shared in the darkness had been desperate, necessary, but now, as if reading her thoughts, Vex's hand cupped her cheek. "No regrets." "None," she said, and meant it. "You, Lee, that we don't have more time." He sat up, already shifting back into the focused predator she'd first encountered. "They'll come looking for you when the storm clears. Your father, Aldrich's men, maybe both." The reminder of the outside world sent cold through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. "What do we do?" "We end this." Vex was already reaching for his clothes, his movements economical and purposeful. Aldrich won't stop hunting human like him can't bear to lose what they consider theirs. But if he's dead, ... you're going to kill him. I was always going to kill him. Now I have a better reason. He turned to face her, and she saw something fierce and protective burning in his pale eyes. "But I need you safe first." Kestrel pulled his coat around herself more tightly. "Where can I go? My father gave me to Aldrich once. He'll do it again. I have no money, no allies. You have me." Simple declaration sent warmth through her chest. "There's a woman in Raven's Hollow who helps people like you women who need to disappear, start over. Rin owes me favors, and then you'll come for me." She couldn't keep the uncertainty from her voice. Vex moved to her, kneeling in the snow-dampened earth. His hands framed her face with surprising tenderness. "Kestrel, what happened here, it wasn't just survival. It wasn't just one night." "I know." She covered his hands with hers. "I feel it too, and trust me. Let me finish this." And then he paused, seeming to weigh his words. "Then let me try to be the man you deserve." Before she could respond, the sound of voices drifted through the morning air, male voices, calling her name with false concern. They both froze, listening. "Kestrel, Lady Kestrel, where are you?" "Your father's men," Vex said grimly, already reaching for his weapons. "They're closer than I expected." "How many?" "4, maybe 5. He was checking his crossbow, counting bolts with practiced efficiency. "I can handle them, but not if you're here. They'll use you against me." Kestrel felt panic rising in her throat. "I won't leave you. Yes, you will." His voice brooked no argument. "There's a path along the ridge, hidden by the rocks. Follow it east until you reach the old mill Mirren. We'll find you there." He pressed a small, carved token into her hand. "Show her this." The voices were getting closer. Kestrel could hear them spreading out, searching methodically. In minutes, they would find the cave. Vexy silenced her with a fierce, possessive kiss that tasted of promises and desperation. "Go now." "I love you," she whispered, the words tumbling out without thought. His eyes widened slightly, then softened. "And I love you." "Which is why you need to run." Kestrel gathered what remained of her torn dress and fled toward the hidden path, her heart breaking with every step that took her away from him. Behind her, she heard Vex's voice ring out, cold and mocking. "Looking for someone, gentlemen? I'm afraid the lady isn't receiving visitors." The sound of steel being drawn echoed off the mountainside. followed by shouts of alarm and the distinctive whistle of crossbow bolts. Kestrel ran faster, tears freezing on her cheeks as the battle erupted behind her. 3 days later, Vex found Kestrel exactly where he'd told her to wait. The old mill sat beside a frozen stream, its wheel locked in ice, and Mirren had indeed found her. The older woman had provided warm clothes, hot food, and most importantly, the kind of matter-of-fact acceptance that Kestrel desperately needed. "He's alive," Mirren announced, before Kestrel could even ask. Seeing her face, when Vex's familiar silhouette appeared through the trees, battered, but alive. "Though I suspect he's carrying more than physical wounds." Kestrel ran to him without caring how it looked, throwing herself into his arms despite the way he winced. His left shoulder was bound with fresh bandages, and a new scar decorated his jaw, but his eyes were clear and focused entirely on her. "It's done," he said simply. She pulled back to study his face. "Aldrich. Dead. Your father's men scattered when they realized what they were really dealing with." His expression darkened. "Your father. He was with them. He tried to negotiate when he saw how badly outmatched his men were. What did he want? To sell you to someone else?" Apparently, Aldrich had already paid, so he felt he owed his new buyer a replacement. Vex's jaw tightened. I made it clear that wouldn't be happening. Kestrel felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. She'd lost her family, but gained something infinitely more valuable, her freedom, and the man who'd helped her claim it. "What now?" she asked. "Now we disappear." Vex's arms tightened around her. "Mirren has papers for you, a new name, a new history. You can go anywhere you want." "What about your work? The bounties, the hunting?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the frozen landscape. "There will always be men like Aldrich, always be women who need help. But maybe it's time I found a different way to help them." "What did you have in mind?" "Myron's operation could use expansion. People who can move unseen, gather information, make dangerous people disappear when necessary." He looked down at her with something that might have been hope. "No. Partners who trust each other completely." Kestrel felt her heart swell. "You want us to work together?" "I want us to build something together. Network that helps people like you, like my sister should have been helped." His voice grew fierce. "I want to make sure no woman ever has to run alone into a blizzard again. And when we're not saving the world?" His smile was soft, transformative. "When we're not saving the world, I want to love you properly. In a real bed, in a house that's ours, with time to learn everything about each other. Even my terrible morning temper, especially your terrible morning temper." Mirren cleared her throat diplomatically. "If you two are finished being disgustingly romantic, we have work to discuss. There are 3 other women who need new identities this month, and reports of a particularly nasty lord in the southern provinces." Vex and Kestrel looked at each other and smiled. "Partners?" he asked. "Partners," she agreed, as they walked toward the mill to begin planning their new life. Kestrel realized that running from her wedding had led her to something she'd never expected to find: a purpose, a partner, and a love that burned hotter than any fire they could build against the cold. Behind them, fresh snow began to fall, covering their tracks and erasing their past, leaving them free to write their own future together. 1 year later, Kestrel stood in the window of their cottage, watching Vex approach through the autumn woods. He moved differently, no, still with that predatory grace, but softer somehow, the hard edges worn smooth by happiness and security. Over the past 12 months, they'd helped 17 women disappear from dangerous situations, dismantled to trafficking operations, and eliminated 5 men whose cruelty had gone unpunished by conventional law. But more than that, they'd built something beautiful together. "Any luck with Lady Morwen?" Kestrel asked as he entered, automatically helping him out of his travel pack. "She's safely with the sisters at Thornvale Abbey. Her husband will receive word that she died of fever." Vex pulled her into his arms, breathing in the scent of her hair. "He'll remarry within the month and forget she'll ever existed." "Good." Kestrel had met Lady Morwena, gentle soul, whose husband had taken his fists to her one too many times. Mirren sent word about the Blackthorn situation. Apparently our reputation has reached the capital, meaning we have a request. From someone very highly placed to deal with a certain duke who's been importing his wives from the eastern provinces. She smiled grimly. Young wives. Very young. Vex's eyes went cold and sharp. When do we leave? Tomorrow. But tonight. She reached up to trace the scar along his jaw, the one he'd earned saving her from her father's men. Tonight is ours. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I love this life we've built, even when it means sleeping in caves and dodging swords, especially then. His arms tightened around her. Do you know what I was thinking about today, riding back to you? Tell me. That night in the cave. How we found each other in the darkness. How we made our own fire when the world went cold. He cupped her face in his hands. We've been doing that ever since, finding light in dark places, creating warmth where there was none. Kestrel felt her heart swell with the fierce joy that still surprised her some days. We're good at it. We're perfect at it. He leaned down to kiss her, soft, and sure and full of promise. I have something for you. It's not my birthday. It's the anniversary of the day I found you. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small velvet box. The day my life really started. Inside was a ring knot, the gaudy display of wealth she'd worn briefly as Aldrich's intended, but something simple and perfect. A silver band set with a stone, the pale blue white of winter ice. It's beautiful. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. But we're already bound, you and I. We have been since that first night. I know. He slipped the ring onto her finger, where it settled like it had always belonged. But I wanted the world to know it too. I wanted to promise you properly, in the daylight, with words instead of just desperate need. And what are you promising me? Vex of the mountains? His smile was radiant. Everything. All of it. Every sunrise, every mission, every quiet moment between storms, a partnership in all.